That's Justice and Beyond. We meet every Monday, rain, sleet, snow. We meet every Monday, so it is good to have y'all in the house. We've been going strong for 6 years, reorganized a little bit. We are established and managed and focused, all of those words, by our pillars. Our pillar are organizations that have signed on the line to be about the visions, casting, and management of this organization. There are some in the room now, those organizations that have signed up to meet with us every Tuesday and figure out what we're going to do in our upcoming forums and what actions we're going to take. So thank you all for dedicating yourself to being here tonight for this very important discussion. Listen, on the back of your agendas, there is what we call a code of conduct. We want to govern ourselves in this space by 3 words: respect, peace, and love. And if you look at that code of conduct, it has to do with how we talk to each other, how we engage each other, how we turn off our cell phones or put them on vibrate, all of the above, so that we conduct ourselves by peace, love, and respect. Look that over briefly. We need to know whether you agree with that or not so that we can continue this conversation. I'll give you about 2 seconds to look over that. If you agree with that code of conduct, please signify by saying, I do.
I do.
All right. If you do not, say, I don't. All right. Then we are all good. We are excited tonight to talk to our candidates. I think what we're going to do is just have each candidate from 91, 100, and the Senate candidates, if they are in the room, all at the table all at once. And then we are very excited to have Miss Renette Dejoie-Hall, who's going to be interviewing tonight. We are honored to have her. And so, Miss Renette, if you would have a seat here, we're going to go about that. Listen, there will be questions that will not be asked by either the co-moderators or by Miss Renette. And so because of that, we want you to have an opportunity to ask questions yourself. And so to the left side and the right side of the stage, there are buckets with index cards. If you come up with a question at any time, drop it in those buckets, and then they will be passed to the moderator's table. If you wish to ask your own question, you will have approximately a minute and a half to ask that question. But write your name on that index card so we will know to call on you if you would like to ask your own question within 90 seconds. So remember those buckets to the left and right side of the stage. With no further ado, we're going to get started. And we're going to ask first that the candidates would take 3 minutes to introduce yourselves and tell us whatever you want to tell us about your platform and what is meaningful and significant to you as you run for your candidacy. All right? We'll start out here with Ms. Butler. And please use a microphone. There are some that may be hearing impaired, and so we use them for that reason. Either way, whatever you want to do.
I am happy right here.
All right.
Good evening, Justice and Beyond. Thank you so much for allowing me to come this evening and chat with you about who I am, what I believe in, and the reasons that I'm running for House Seat District 91. I am Dr. Bowen Roussel. I am founding director of Culinaria Center for Food Law, Policy, and Culture. I am a native New Orleanian. I am a Louisiana girl. And I want to be the next House seat representative from District 91. District 91 runs through the center of town. It is affectionately called the microcosm of New Orleans. We run from the river to the parish line, and we cover neighborhoods including Irish Channel, Lower Garden District, Central City, Gertown, Fontainebleau, Marleyville, East Carrollton, did I say Holly Grove? And a little cutout just behind the Costco in Mid-City. What that effectively does is dilate the voices of everyone who's in those neighborhoods because all of their needs are not being heard, nor are they being met effectively and efficiently. The objective for me, in fact the reason that I joined the race, is that no one was talking about redistricting. That is how it is that we actually cut the districts in for voting purposes, as well as a natural byproduct, is to receive money for infrastructure into those neighborhoods. And so I would love for you to come with me on a very aspirational journey as I think about how it is that it could look. At this moment, where we are cutting through 7 different neighborhoods, we have one person who is representing the needs of those who are in Irish Channel, as well as the needs of those who are in Burtown. The folks who cast their votes in Irish Channel count just as well as those who cast their votes in Burtown. What becomes a rather difficult scenario is that the situations are a little bit more dire in Burtown, depending upon who you're talking to, especially those who may have been impacted by the radioactive materials that were recently found, than they are in Irish Channel, where our biggest complaint is often that we've got potholes, but have found very creative ways to deal with them, such as putting entire gardens now in them, and possibly, and even setting up sofas with Homer Simpsons in order to bring attention. These are not the same level of issue, nor should they have the same person who's attempting to identify where funds will be going in order to ensure that folks in those neighborhoods are taken care of. My very aspirational view is to cut the districts around neighborhoods as opposed to through them. That way we are centering the folks who live in the neighborhoods as opposed to who can actually represent the neighborhood. We care less than...
Thank you, Ms. Beverly. Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right. Mr. Hughes.
Good evening, everyone. Let me first thank Ms. Dejoie-Hall for moderating this forum tonight. Let me also thank our co-moderators of Justice and Beyond, Ms. McKenzie, my friend, and Pastor Manning. And let me thank the Justice and Beyond Coalition for this invitation. I'm Jason Hughes. I am a candidate for the House of Representatives, District 100. I am a lifelong resident of House District 100. I was born at Methodist Hospital in District 100. I began preschool at Peralt's Kitty College in District 100. I went to Mildred's. I'm a proud product of our public school system. Mildred C. Osborne in New Orleans East for kindergarten through 8th grade. McDonald 35 for high school, where I graduated as a BESE scholar, and finished my undergrad at Southern University at Baton Rouge, where I graduated with honors and a Chancellor Scholar. Professionally, I have over 15 years of substantive experience in government and public policy. My career actually began my senior year at Southern University as an intern for former Governor Kathleen Blanco. Upon graduating, I was hired full-time, where I served through the end of her term. From there, I went on to serve as an advisor to United States Senator Mary Landrieu. From there, I became the very first executive director for the Southern University system, where I reported to 2 presidents, was a member of their executive cabinet, and coordinated the federal, state, and municipal agendas in New Orleans, Shreveport, and Baton Rouge for the 5 campuses that encompass the Southern University system. Subsequently, I served as Director of Federal Relations for the City of New Orleans, and then went on to serve as the very first Chief of Staff for a global foundation based in D.C., where I was the liaison to the Obama White House, several members of Congress, and 7 United States governors across the United States. It is the depth and breadth of my experience that makes me uniquely qualified for this position. I've been very actively engaged civically. Most recently, I have served as the chairman of the New Orleans City Planning Commission, where I was not only a bold voice for New Orleans East, but I was a bold voice for all of our neighborhoods, the Lower Ninth Ward, Uptown, Lakeview, Irish Channel, didn't matter. I wanted to ensure that every citizen was treated first and foremost with respect, that I kept an open mind, that I gave every application due diligence, and I challenged residents and neighborhoods and developers alike. Let's not find ways why projects can't work. Let's find consensus why they can. And many of you who are familiar with my work on the City Planning Commission know that I am a consensus builder. Really quickly, because I look forward to the questions, 3 areas where I will be laser focused on in Baton Rouge if elected. Number 1, realizing that education is the mortal enemy to poverty. Investing in early childhood education is absolutely critical. Far too often we talk about your zip code will dictate your future. While we can't control where one is born.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
Thank you. Look forward to answering your question.
All right, we'll turn it over to you, Ms. Renette.
Well, we're going to let you finish that groove. Jackson bus back online in the Lord knows.
Yes.
Yes.
Making a public statement about reducing sewer and water board rates for seniors, disabled, poor, and a lifeline lower rate structure for residential and small business owners.
Yes.
Yes.
Having a fair billing dispute system with a third-party arbitrator, such as the South SO East Legal Services or Justice and Beyond. Having a fair...
No, I heard the question. They're just things I want to sort of unpack, but I will say yes in broad strokes.
Yes.
Having sewage and water board satellite stations in the community to handle billing errors and payments.
Yes.
Absolutely.
A calendar plan to remove all lead lines, including the solid lead whip lines to home.
Yes.
Absolutely.
A program to get residents certified filters that remove lead and other toxins for kitchen faucets at no charge to the elderly, disabled, or poor.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Placing sewage and water board under the city council as a more accountable governance body and implementing a plan to end the privatization of the sewage and water board work. Increasing efficiency, accountability, saving money, hiring resident employees, and running the operation.
Yes.
Not at this time.
Moving all meetings that should involve the public, like the sewage and water board, RTA, and energy, to evenings.
Yes.
Open to it, yes.
Changing the legislation to allow children to attend the school in their community.
Yes.
Yes.
Ending industrial tax breaks for plants that have high tumor rates within 100 miles of their facilities.
Yes.
Yes.
Putting our residents first before state transportation needs and other plans to industrialize communities. Specifically stop the Florida freeway from coming through the 7th, 8th, and 9th wards and getting heavy trucks off St. Claude and North Claiborne Avenue.
Yes.
No, I'd like to learn more about it.
Removing lead service and lead water lines throughout the state.
Yes.
Yes.
Developing a green infrastructure plan, especially for areas that flood, including the right to place rain gardens, bioswales on any light land, and eliminating concrete and other non-permeable surfaces from our future transportation plans.
Yes.
Yes.
Preventing state funding of any tourist entity that pays less than a living wage of $4.15 per hour.
Wait.
Preventing state funding of any tourist entity that pays less than a living wage of $4.15 per hour.
14. The living wage is where we're headed, so yes.
I think that question is accurate, and I'll put it in context for just 10 seconds. It says a tourism entity, and so that could be a restaurant that pays tip wages,
Yeah.
which pays less than $7.25.
Yes,
So just to put it in context.
Well, yeah, that's true, but that doesn't mean it's a living wage, and it also does not mean that is an equitable solution, especially since we have so many women who are heading in over 25%.
So that would be yes
If we
for
say
both
living
of you.
wage, it's a living wage, we're talking living wage. Yes.
Well, if you work at a restaurant, the $2.15 per hour is your living wage, and the tips are after that. That is considered your living wage. That is your,
It's the way.
it's your wage,
Right.
which you live off of.
It's a yes for me.
I think the typo though is that someone meant to hit the dollar sign, which is shift and four, and hence they missed that.
Now, I got a dollar sign.
Okay, well, there you go.
So dollar sign, the 4,
I tried it.
a decimal, a 1 and a 5. 4.50.
That's a yes.
So yes for both.
All right.
Preventing police from arresting children for non-criminal actions and misdemeanors or taking them into custody.
Yes.
Yes.
Increasing the amount of payments to jurors who are low income and who may not be paid by employers to encourage a diverse pool of jurors.
Yes.
Streamlining the food stamp application system and making it fair for poor people, as the current online system is too clunky and many of the poor do not have computers. This is agenda leftover as a sidewalk.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Did you say that because I said it's agenda leftover?
Either way, so be it.
Fighting the expansion of the industrial canal and getting it off the federal government and Army Corps rosters.
Yes.
Yes.
Those are the rapid fire questions that were presented to me.
Let me pause there real quick too and remind everyone, please hand in any questions that you may have by way of the buckets with the index cards next to them at any time.
Okay, so now we're going to provide you about 30 seconds to respond to these questions. Ladies first. What do you propose doing to make sure the Medicare expansion reaches the maximum number and most needy people in the state?
The Medicaid expansion is something that would need to be, or that any representative could only work with other representatives in order to move forward. That is something that the New Orleans delegation would have to work together in order to champion at the state level, because it's not something that a single representative could do on their own. And what that means for me is partnering with folk who are in these areas and creating
Well, for me, we have to keep in mind that currently Medicaid expansion is only possible in Louisiana because it was done by executive order. So if we have a new governor that comes in, they can strip Medicaid expansion immediately. So one of the first things we need to do, in my opinion, is follow what other states have done across the United States, and they have done this legislatively. So we need to codify Medicaid expansion into law, number one. Number two, we need to ensure that we eliminate barriers to Medicaid expansion. Work requirements should be off the table without question. And we need to be more aggressive in our outreach, ensuring that citizens in particular in our rural parishes and rural areas that may not have access to television, broadband access, we need to be very grassroots in ensuring we need to treat it like the census and treat it like a campaign to get more citizens signed up and involved.
Continuing on that vein, what will you do to make sure that the Medicare contracts are fair and equitable, not slamming in favor of one or another?
I will say, in the interest of full disclosure, I do not know enough about the contract distribution, who is getting the contracts and how all of that works. What I do know is that our disadvantaged businesses are allotted a pittance and are often there, not necessarily because they are getting what they need in order to commit to the industry, but because they fill a quota, and that does not serve any of us.
Yeah, I think we always need to ensure fairness and transparency in our contracting process, but I think we need to look at and overhaul the state procurement process in its entirety. I've known Governor Edwards since 2007, so if he's reelected, I anticipate having a strong relationship with him. But I've already had very candid conversations with his Chief of Staff, Mark Cooper, his Deputy Chief of Staff, Adrian Wilson, and his Policy Director, Aaron Monroe-Wesley, just to give them a heads up. If I'm elected, I'm going to be laser focused on overhauling the procurement process to ensure that women and minorities are given equal treatment in the procurement process.
What will you do to reverse the ruling that feminine hygiene products and diapers are considered necessities and are not taxed. What will you do to reverse the ruling that was passed in the last legislative session that feminine hygiene products and diapers are considered necessities and will not be taxed?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, and one thing I'll always be with you is honest. I remember at a high level the legislation, I think it was brought forth by Senator J.P. Morrell. I'm not really familiar with the intimate details in that particular ruling, so what I can do is give my commitment to study that more in depth, but I would need to be more familiar with the ruling and the legislation.
Just like many of the legislation that was posed last session that did not pass, is lacking a shepherd, and it's also lacking someone to champion it. So the idea of writing a new legislation that will revive and maybe expand to adjusting the tax credits, and in my personal opinion, we should be looking at ITEP and using money from there in order to offset many of the funds, is something that we could and should do.
How are you doing? How are you going to do the right thing? Even if it may not seem in your best interest right now, to protect our voters against gerrymandering and voter suppression, so that election districts are not rigged for one party or another.
The most consequential issue that the next legislature will face is redistricting. And it's going to have consequences for a very long time. And so we're going to have to ensure that districts are drawn fairly. We are going to have to ensure that incumbency is not taken into the equation when we draw districts. Right now, I'm just looking at the population of New Orleans East. New Orleans is probably poised to gain 2 districts in the House and 1 district in the Senate. And so I'm already anticipating that my district, if elected, will look very differently in 4 years, and I may have to run a new territory. And I'm fine with that, so long as districts are drawn fairly across the state, and that is absolutely vital. If we look at the BESE districts, Supreme Court districts, congressional districts, many of them are gerrymandered. There's no reason why the 2nd congressional district should be running all the way from New Orleans to Baton Rouge. Senate District 2 that we lost here in New Orleans, it starts in St. John Parish and it goes all the way to West Baton Rouge, 9 parishes, just to create a minority district. We have to be fair when we draw these districts.
How do you plan to address and make sure that our voters are protected against gerrymandering and voter suppression?
There are several groups that are working on a national level to ensure that when we look again at the districts themselves, that they are being protected. Not the least of which is Eric Holder's group, the National Redistricting Democratic Committee. The idea is that by leveraging the national as well as state and local voices, that we can then ensure that these districts are drawn in a way that makes sense for the residents who already live there. The census is the first thing to be protected by ensuring that we are not capturing or asking folk what their citizenship is. We can ensure that we have a correct count of how many people are actually living there. Additionally, the voter laws, or the election laws around when the polls are moved and how much notice needs to be given to residents is something that is within 10 days, but there is no restriction on where or how far from the existing polling place those new polling places can go. There's also, if we are going to continue to move polling places at the last minute, there needs to be an additional or some sort of a fail-safe for those who are unable to move themselves from the existing polling place location to the new location.
I just want to add one thing. The day that the House of Representatives is sworn in, the first 3 votes that the House will take will first vote on the new Speaker of the House, will secondly vote on the Speaker pro tem, and the third vote that we will take, we will have a new clerk of the House of Representatives for the first time in many years. Now, why is that important? The clerk of the House really controls floor procedures and rules on parliamentary procedure. And I'm sure this is probably shaping up to be a fight, but we're going to have to make sure that we elect a clerk that is not too partisan, but that is committed to doing the right thing. It is important that as your elected legislators, knowing the House rules, critically important.
What legislation will you push through to tighten and enforce the oversight statewide of the chemical industry and its plants to make sure the poor and disenfranchised are not disproportionately affected by pollution while holding them accountable to clean up the mess that is along the Mississippi River from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, better known, unfortunately, as the Cancer Alley?
So, some years ago, Buddy Romer implemented an environmental scorecard. And that environmental scorecard actually tapped into the industrial tax exemption program and ensured that the money that was in that bank or in that cash was being used for areas that were most hard hit. As I understand it, it guaranteed him losing that seat as governor. But what makes really good sense to me is one that we re-implement, if not the entire thing, then at least in part, the idea of an environmental scorecard so that as we have these chemical companies that are coming in from outside, we know their track record. And instead of relying upon sanctions at the back end, that we compel compliance on the front end with additional permitting and ensuring that there is a larger section or a percentage of their profit that will go to remediation of the land, soil, and water, the soil, air, and water that is in the area in which they sit. Additionally, for those environmental stuff, such as water that will traverse downstream, that it is not just for that particular area, that it also, for every parish that they touch, that there is additional funding that they need to pay. So the legislation in and of itself would really be to re-implement the scorecard, and the mechanism to enforce would really be to collect money on the front end.
Thank you. So there's been obviously a lot in the news lately about Cancer Alley. Very concerning. It should be on all of our minds. I will be honest, I have not come up with specific legislation yet. However, so I was heartened in the audience from the Center for Detail Environmental Justice, Dr. Beverly Wright. I would look to work with individuals and organizations like that to address such an important issue.
Let me just jump in there real quick too, just to let both of you know, Justice and Beyond has developed a coalition along with those other organizations located in the river parishes, namely St. John and St. James Parish. We have renamed Cancer Alley Death Alley, the organization, because of the understanding that there's more than just cancer that is killing people along the river, including in New Orleans. And so our organization that we're a part of is called CADA, C-A-D-A, Coalition Against Death Alley. And we would love to have you both continued support in our goals and in our vision and our mission and holding those petrochemical industries accountable. We'll be having a march October 15th through the 30th. We would love your support in that as we march in Orleans Parish, St. John and St. James Parish, and a couple others as well too. So.
How will you tackle the oil and gas industry's chokehold on Louisiana to ensure the survival of the people of Louisiana? Our coast is disappearing, our people are dying. We are so far behind the times in the renewable energy field and ill prepared for the impending changes coming our way with climate change.
Thank you. So about 2 weeks ago, I did a coastal flyover, and I was able to see firsthand how our coast continues to dissipate. And I've been talking about this issue very openly. Typically in urban areas, we don't think much about coastal erosion and coastal restoration. But as our coast continues to erode, it certainly puts the city of New Orleans in particular at risk. Also at a time when the National Flood Insurance Program is at peril, and part of a partisan fight in Washington, D.C., and places our flood insurance at risk as well. We do have to think more about green energy and renewable energy and stop being so dependent on energy that is certainly being detrimental to our coast. And so I'm committed to that.
My lived experience tells me that we have to change the way that we demand things, the way that we approach things, and because supply and demand is a real thing. And as long as Louisiana continues to negotiate from a position of weakness with petrochemical companies, not ever recognizing or even acknowledging that it's the infrastructure that goes into installing to building a petrochemical company as well as installing a pipeline, these are not things that they're going to be willing to pull up and walk away from anytime soon. Now, this is all to say that this is where how we need to adjust our approach. Additionally, what makes far more sense is to utilize the natural resources that we have as opposed to continuing down this path that allows not only seepage into the water, but also pollution of the air and contamination of the ground for generations to come. Green jobs and green industry is an actual industry that can make actual money for actual people, as opposed to just saying that the petrochemical companies are bringing in jobs and that's what our neighborhoods need, this is what our people need. There are alternatives. There are other ways that we can go about doing exactly what it is that we're doing. We have to demand those changes from where we are and to hold our lawmakers accountable. This is not just about House Seat 91. This is about our governor. This is about our senators. This is about our president. Ensuring that the air that we breathe is safe because we are using renewable energy as opposed to continuing to degrade our environment. Excuse me.
Are you willing to support a ban on fracking? We are at the end of the line and can no longer consider this a bridge fuel as it once was.
So, I'm sure most of you know that the way fracking works is that we push water into the ground and we break up the shale, and then we're creating more pollution into the water stream and the water system in and of itself in order to extract bits and pieces, as opposed to just pulling out the oil. And sometimes we're looking at also gas or gas. Anyway, no, it's the one that goes in the tank when you use the barbecue propane. That's wrong too. Anyway, no, please don't go down this rabbit hole with me. Don't do it. Save yourselves. So, fracking creates more harm, not just to the earth itself, but also to the water systems and the water tables. This is not just for surface, but this is also for groundwater. This is for everyone who is living in those neighborhoods and those areas. It creates a much longer term issue. The fracking that we've had on the North Shore, for the many reasons that it is on the North Shore, we collectively, again, back to the last answer, need to be more strong in our negotiations around what it is that we get out of these deals. I do not advocate that we continue to sell ourselves out and our generations out to come. What I am saying is that if we are going to continue to do it this way, that we, the people, need to be getting more out of the deal. We need to be getting money for schools. We need to be getting money for remediation. We need to be getting money for cancer treatments. We need to be getting money for hospitals, for future hospital expenses for folks who are going to live in these areas and these neighborhoods.
Pepper is obviously very passionate about the environment, and this is her expertise, and I think I should just lean back in my chair and take out my notebook and take notes and let something else happen. But to answer the question, yes, I do support a ban on fracking. We saw in recent years, this was a very hot button issue in St. Tammany Parish, for example, and the community really stood up, to fight it, and they were on the right side of it, and I think we need to follow a similar approach here in Orleans.
Louisiana has 216 sunny days per year. We can certainly capitalize on solar energy and wind energy. while we provide thousands of jobs in the process. What will you do to make this happen? Are you willing to do something to make this happen?
Yes, absolutely. As we're talking about meaningful economic development in District 100, for example, I think District 100 is ripe for meaningful economic development. And one issue that I'm laser focused on is green energy jobs. I have also given a heads up, just as I have to members of the governor's staff, Dr. Chuck Brown, who is the Secretary of DEQ. I have given him a heads up if the Edwards administration is retained and he is retained, that we need to do more to focus on green energy and green energy jobs. And working not only with DEQ, but the Louisiana Department of Economic Development to incentivize the creation of green energy jobs.
216 days that we have that are sunny can actually pay for the electricity itself. So if we were to install solar farms, especially in areas where we have an aging population, those don't have to be on the ground, they can be on the roof, then the folks who are living there will then not have to pay as much in an energy bill, right? Who doesn't want that? And it also has a way of increasing their livability in the space. So what I would do would be to begin the process of working with especially Black owned and operated, or people of color owned and operated, and women of color owned women owned and operated businesses that are already in the solar space, in order to ensure that as we are moving forward, we are using we're using people who have institutional knowledge, and so when the contracts are issued, that we are not only allowing these folks to move to the front and to lead in those areas, but they're also benefiting for themselves and for the next generation.
All right, with that said, we've got about 8 minutes for questioning of these candidates. We have 3 questions over here that are from our audience. So, Ms. Renette, if it's all right with you, we're going to move to these, and if you want to follow them up with some more questions, that'd be great. All right. And please, as you come up to ask your question, you have about 90 seconds to formulate that question and get it out.
Dr. Jones.
So I'm a father of 3 kids, a 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old. I'm a father of a 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old. I've had absolutely horrible interactions with the New Orleans public school system, but I believe in I believe in public school education. So what I would ask you is this. First off, would it be either of your roles to be to interact with the school system and the school board? And if so, can we and should we abandon the charter school experiment and return to district schools? And how could you assist with that?
So thank you very much for that question, and I'll take a stab at it. Yes, the legislature certainly has a role in interacting with the local school system. And I realize there's lots of frustration with the local school system, and there's probably some things that we're going to have to look at legislatively in Baton Rouge as a delegation. In the interim, though, all these parish school boards need to start doing their job. Right now, there's an unfair mandate being placed on the legislature and legislative candidates to do the job that all these parish school boards should be doing. Now, I realize there's a lot of frustration with Act 91, and we're going to have to look at that as a delegation. But let's
clarify what's
Act 91 was passed, I think, 2 legislative sessions ago, and basically it was to serve as a framework to allow all of the charter schools that were under the control of the Recovery School District. They were placed under the control of the Orleans Parish School Board, but with several conditions. If you return under the Orleans Parish School Board, the Orleans Parish School Board doesn't have authority to do, and it's roughly 16 things. I see Dr. Bouie in the audience. He could probably articulate it far better than me. But what we have to realize is that Act 91 currently does not prevent the Orleans Parish School Board from running schools directly. As they revoke charters, and I'll use John, and there's several horrific examples if we look at what happened at Hardy and other cases. But Kennedy is the most recent example that's absolutely heinous, where the Orleans Parish School Board completely neglected its duty. Not only did it not revoke the charter, New Beginnings voluntarily said, we'll give up the charter. But guess what the Orleans Parish School Board did? They said, okay, we'll let you run the school that you failed, we'll let you run it for an additional year, and then they said, we're going to give it to Kim. The Orleans Parish School Board should have immediately revoked that charter. That should have been under the auspice of the Orleans Parish School Board, and the school board should be running Kennedy directly. And that's just one example. Now, charter schools I don't think are going away, I'll be honest. You have some charter schools that are doing good, and I realize most people in this room probably don't like charters, okay? Lake Forest Charter School, for example, is in District 100. It is run by a pre-Katrina educator, Mondale Early, who aspired just like the other thousands of teachers. And I think she's a very competent educator. But the Orleans Parish School District, I'm a proud product of public schools, and it has served me quite well. It served my father well, and it served so many others well. The school board should be in the business of running schools. And so one of the first things, I'm already on record saying this, I don't know if there's going to be a political appetite in Baton Rouge just because of the conservative nature of our legislature to outright repeal Act 91, but the superintendent, who is not elected by the people, has far too much power. And we should shift that power to the democratically elected school board. I have also publicly called on the school board because they have a legal and legislative committee, and they also have a lobbyist. When they craft their legislative agenda, they need to be proactive at calling for these changes as well. And so a lot of, yes, the legislature certainly plays a role, but the Orleans Parish School Board, in my opinion, is just kicking the can down the road, and they're saying, oh, our hands are tied, but they're not doing much on their end.
I can add nothing constructive to that answer. So I will,
I'm glad to hear you feel that way.
thank you.
Mr. Alvin Smith.
Yeah, just to clarify that, if your name is on the card, then you will be asked to read it yourself. If not, then we'll read it.
Many elderly and veterans of color, people of age are going through tax sales, losing their property, because they sell these tax sales to out-of-state people or companies, and when they try to get in contact with these people to make arrangements to either purchase the property back or whatever, they sell it for a high markup, where the person cannot actually buy his own property back. Is there anything we can or will do to protect elderly and senior citizens from these type of practices?
Our mature population is definitely far more vulnerable than most others. Mainly because once you reach become a person of a certain age, you don't work nearly as often or as hard as you may have done before. Additionally, entering the workforce at such an age is often complicated. So most things that need to be done around these sorts of actions need to be done around the taxes themselves. So first and foremost, there are already existing processes on the books, say in California and Florida, whereby the the taxes are frozen at the cost of the house. And they do not increase, no matter what the neighborhood does. They do not decrease. At the cost of the house, something that is baked in, right? And so this would help, say, this past go-round, even though we do still have quite a number of houses in the uptown area that need to be assessed, where folks were receiving tax bills that were triple and quadruple what they were accustomed to paying, that would no longer be an issue, right? So that's first. Secondarily, for those properties that are being sold at tax sale, it's not even the property itself that's being sold, it is just the taxes. It's a hold on the taxes. But the mechanism is codified in municipal code, so that's here just in town. What we should be doing is looking at an umbrella state legislation that would not allow, and what's unfortunate is that there won't be as many cities as there are rural areas, but we do have, I suppose, yes, good and bad, We do have black farm owners who are facing very similar issues where they are losing land and being pushed off of land for taxes and other issues. So, as a broad sweeping approach, what we can and should do is to require that anyone who purchases the taxes has every intention of living in or on that land. If it is farmland or agricultural, then they have every intention of actually farming it. And if they do not, then the taxes in and of themselves cannot be sold. Additionally, I think there needs to be more education around how it is that folks can buy those taxes back. Because there's a window that will allow you to do that, and most don't know that.
So I definitely agree with the things that Ms. Roussel said. I will add just a couple things. Number one, when we look at, because the question was specifically around elderly populations, right now in Orleans Parish, I think at 65 years of age and roughly $67,000 household income, you qualify for a tax freeze of your taxes. Number one, I do think we need to look at the amount, $67,000. That amount has been the same for many, many years. That has not factored in inflation. If you have two retirees in the house, let's say the household income is $90,000, I still think that you should qualify for a tax freeze. So I think we need to look at that number overall. Number two, you still have lots of elderly citizens that don't even know that they qualify for a tax freeze. I was at the meeting at Corpus Christi a couple of weeks ago. There was a lady who was sitting next to me. She was 72 years old, didn't even realize she qualified for a tax freeze. So her taxes could have been frozen for the past 7 years or so. So I do think we have to be more proactive and letting our citizens know about our elderly populations, about the tax freeze. And I know it's difficult, and I know the assessor is open to figuring this out. But how can you, once a citizen is 65 years of age, how can that freeze go into effect automatically? Collecting that data is what we have to figure out. The second thing I will say, beyond the elderly population, working class citizens are in peril as well. At least 10 states have passed legislation that says, regardless of what the reevaluation of your property is, tax increases are capped at 10%. And so, if your house 4 years ago, during the last congenital assessment, if your home was valued at $150,000, and 4 years later, if your home is valued at $400,000, your taxes can only increase by 10%. And so I do think we need to look at best practices that are on the books from other states and look to implement that here in Louisiana.
And this is the last one. It states, many of us tonight are members of COTA. Would you dedicate a half day to march with our big protest group during the October 15th through October 30th period?
Sure, I'll be happy to join you, but in addition to dedicating a half day to marching, I'd like to dedicate a half day or more, really, to learn more about your issues and then become more abreast on your issues. So if I give you a half day to march, I would ask in return that you give me a half day or more to put me through boot camp so that I can really learn more about your issues.
Absolutely. We extend that invitation.
Yes.
Pepper, please.
So, absolutely. The only question is where we're going to. The last march that went to Baton Rouge, we talked about this, Reverend Manning, and I didn't want to sleep out. I just wasn't until after it started I found out y'all were coming back every night, which is a whole different conversation. But yes, I'm absolutely dedicated to environmental groups, not only here but on the way to boot camp Dead Valley.
Very good. We appreciate your support, and we'll take you to boot camp too, and give you all the information. And we will have some information coming shortly with some further information about what our route is and what our agenda is coming up within the next couple of weeks. With that said, in a moment we're going to move to Senate District 3, but let's close up with you both by just giving you two minutes. I'm sorry, Ms. Renette, go ahead.
If I may ask a few questions. First question, what are and be very specific and brief, what are the first 3 things you will do in that?
Every child should have access to high quality early childhood education from birth. The data is clear. And we have too many working families, too many working mothers, too many working fathers that are saying, do I go to work or do I stay home because I cannot afford the $7,600 annually to send my child to high-quality early childhood education? That is criminal in a civilized society. So I will work aggressively, if I am an appropriator, or I will work with appropriators to identify the $87 million that is needed. If we can spend $700 million incarcerating people, we can certainly spend $86 million to educate our babies.
Amen.
And then the third thing that I will focus on immediately, and this is not going to be fixed overnight. You know, there's a lot of talk about crime, there's a lot of talk about a lot of things, but behavioral and mental health, we have got to get serious about that in the state. And if the rest of the state is not interested in mental and behavioral health, New Orleans, we can take all the money. I would love to see New Orleans East Hospital be a center of excellence for mental and behavioral health. And not only are adults affected by this, but many of our kids are suffering from trauma, whether the trauma of Katrina, the trauma of what they're seeing in their neighborhoods or their families, and we have an obligation to address this. Our citizens are never going to reach their full potential if they are suffering with nowhere to turn. It is a public health crisis that we should all be concerned about. It affects all of us either directly or indirectly.
The first three things. So my platform is our families, our communities, and our culture. Our families deserve a living wage. Our families are headed largely in District 91. We are 67% African American women who are head of household for families. Head of households. With a removal of the rule that will allow municipalities to set their own minimum wage, which is something that died in committee last session, we can get to a place where women specifically who are heading households can provide better and more for their families. Additionally, a second piece of legislation that died in committee was the ability to disclose pay. This is how we understand that there are indeed pay inequities, that there are disparities in how folks are being paid for doing the same job with the same experience and the same skill set. Second thing is our communities. Our communities deserve to exist without environmental degradation. We also deserve to have all of the money that is going into those neighborhoods to be spent in areas that are most supportive for the people who are already there. For that reason, redistricting is the second thing that I am putting on my list as being most important. And that is really to ensure that the infrastructure dollars that come into the neighborhoods are being spent in ways that are most supportive and most uplifting to those folks who live there. And the third thing is culture. I am a huge proponent of our culture that has been commercialized in all of its forms. We can create a mechanism to allow those culture bearers to benefit from all of those stories, the songs, the food that they have carried for generations, so that we have the opportunity to keep them within the city limits as opposed to pushing them out to the margins. One of the best and most effective ways, I think, to do that is to leverage the port of New Orleans. There are transportation mechanisms, transportation innovations that are going on out in Baton Rouge that will allow additional train cars and freight cars that are transporting agriculture into the city that need to be expanded to here. We also have the ability to charge more for boats, for ships, for cruise ships especially, that are docking here in order to infuse more money into the culture of New Orleans. So those are my three things: wages, the ports, and redistricting.
And one last question I would like to ask, which I ask all candidates who come before our editorial board. You are very accessible to us while you are running. And all politicians make promises until they are elected. We cannot find them. You all don't answer our phone calls. What will make you different? And will you pledge that you will do the people's work and not become a regular politician?
My grandmother used to say a lot of things, but one of the things she used to say is that your word is your bond. And as I run this campaign, not only am I a reflection of myself, but I'm a reflection of my family. And what makes me different is my record. I'm not only accessible during this campaign, but I was accessible before I ever decided to run for public office. I saw Miss Beth this weekend. I'll pick on you, Miss Beth, I'm sorry. And she came up to me with an issue. I said, Miss Beth, here's my cell phone number. She followed up, and I responded immediately and have been helping her to work through her issue. Miss Sylvia has constantly come before the City Planning Commission, and she can attest. When she calls me or texts me, if I can't take a call, I respond immediately. And there are others in this room that can attest that whether you're in my district or not, when you reach out to me, because I don't consider myself to be a politician, this is service for me. I'm a public servant first and foremost. My dad was a letter carrier. I consider him a public servant. I never realized until I was older how vital his role was. People literally relied on him day to day, and he showed up to work every day. My mother is a social worker for the state of Louisiana. She's a public servant. So service is in my heart. So I'm not going to be one of these people. My cell phone number has been the same since high school. It will not change after the election. I actually have 2 cell phones. And most of you have my cell phone numbers. And so, I pledge, unfortunately, Ms. Dejoie-Hall, I know that's a problem with many. But I just say, look at my record and let my record speak for me. And I have always been accessible throughout my career. And I will continue to be accessible if I am given this honor to serve as state representative for District 1.
I recognize that is a very real concern. I think that part of that concern is because we have a tendency to keep electing the same people to do the same job that don't do it the way it should have been done to start. I am founding director of Culinary Center for Food Law Policy and Culture, and the work that I have been doing since before I got out of law school. The environmental groups that I have a tendency to hang out with or around are the same groups that are the ones that are on the front lines that are fighting these issues here as well as down in other parishes and some of the inland parishes. Additionally, the work that I do on a daily basis does not necessarily lend itself to sitting in a glass or in a castle of some sort. I am accessible to the extent that all you really need to do is usually look out into an audience, and you can find me somewhere, either at a meeting or a meet and greet or someplace that the people already are. The evolution for Culinary is to expand our table so that we bring those folks who are living in the areas that are most impacted by environmental injustice so that we can write laws and policies for them. That's long before and will be after this election. So all I can do is offer myself to you as service. I can offer myself to you because I love this city and I want to ensure that not only this generation but subsequent generations have the opportunity to enjoy her and all of her beauty.
Very good. With that, would you both take about 60 seconds to give us some closing remarks?
Well, first of all, let me once again thank Ms. Dejoie-Hall for moderating. Let me thank the co-moderators, and let me thank the members of the Justice and Beyond Coalition for this invitation. I have really enjoyed the discussion. Many of the questions around environmental issues, not my expertise, but one thing that leaders do when they don't know something, they admit that they don't know something and they take time to learn. And that will be my approach as a legislator. I will never just look you in the eye and blow smoke. If I don't know something, I will say I don't know. The final thing I will say that I didn't really get to talk about on my platform, workforce development is a key issue with me. Before I came here, I was on a panel with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And as we talk about workforce and focus on our high school students, we cannot forget about our juveniles that are incarcerated. We can't just look at juvenile incarceration as prison. And we have to do everything that we can to rehabilitate our juveniles so that they are productive members of society when they return and that they can contribute. And so when we talk about workforce, we can't just talk about students that are in schools. We have to think about our incarcerated juveniles as well so that they can have the skills when they come out to be productive members of society. Let's engage our juveniles. I've looked so many juveniles in the eye and they say, Jason, I don't want to go back. But what's my other option? So I just challenge us to think about that, and I will be challenging the business community and others as they talk about workforce to think about all of our populations. But it would be my honor to serve. It has been my honor to come before you tonight. And thank you so much for this invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Leon. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and see all y'all again. Not usually up this way. I'm usually out there somewhere. But I am Pepper Bowen Roussel. I'm a New Orleans native. I'm a Louisiana girl. I'm founding director of Culinaria Center for Food Law Policy and Culture. I'm committed to our families, our communities, and our culture. To me, it is most important that our families are having a living wage, not only for the opportunities for this generation, but the following subsequent generations to be able to not only live but also age in place, especially as we talk about our mature members of our communities. Our communities are vulnerable. Think of Gordon Plaza and the Kirktown radioactive materials that were recently found. Think all of the environmental degradations, including brown lots in Central City, that put all of our residents in danger and create untenable situations, not just for the children and pets that live there, but also for the adults who attempt to make a living and to create homes. I am committed to our culture. Our culture bearers are those who carry on not only the sounds and the songs of New Orleans, but also the stories that we tell not only to ourselves, but to those who come to visit. If we continue to push them to the margins, we will not have the stories, the reason that people fall in love with New Orleans and all of her glory. It is my intention that we center redistricting in this conversation so that we can at least attempt to encapsulate entire neighborhoods inside of districts so that when the money comes into the district itself, it is serving the neighborhoods and not just a person who could hold it, a party that should have it, but the people who already live there. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, please reach out to me at voteforpepper@gmail.com. That's vote number 4 pepper. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much for your time and for your passion, and we wish you all of God's blessings in your race for your candidacy and all that you do. So thank you all again very much. Ms. Renette, if you'll stay right there, we're going to invite our candidates for Senate District 3, Dr. Joe Bouie, and also we do have the honor and privilege of having a candidate for the BESE board here with us tonight, Ms. Shawon Bernard. If you would come up as well too, we'd love to have you answer some questions as well. If you would just be seated, we're gonna make this quick and fast. Gonna get an update on this game, and we're gonna get moving. All right.
I want to know about songs and genocide. Tell me, I want to know about progress tonight. You know what I'm saying? If I ain't got it, then I'm gonna have it now. Tell me, it's not a game. A bunch of people in the aisle, 2-1. They beat me down, man. White guy and the black guy, man. It hurt. I don't want to go around my kids and say, look, kid, black guy, man.
Everyone, if you will have a seat, we're going to continue. It is part of what we do at Justice and Beyond often to remember those that have paved the way in the fight for justice, also in the fight against racism, institutional systematic racism, and we speak against that, and lift up those who have been very instrumental in the struggle. So we take a memorial time. We don't want to do this while there is not attention in the room, so if you would, those who we memorialize do deserve that attention, so you all can have a seat if you are staying in order that we may have this memorial before we spend some more questioning time. Who's going to do that memorial? Pat, were you going to introduce that? Oh, yes. Do we? Yeah.
everyone should have the pleasure of working in a family business that gives so much to the city. Louisiana Weekly has been one of those businesses where it's been a real service, and one of those persons who helped make it what it is today was Henry Dejoie, whose daughter is sitting right before us. We'd ask her just to give us about 5 minutes of facts, impressions about that gentleman.
Well, I'm not going to do what you asked me for. I will tell you that next week we will begin our 95th year in publication. I will tell you that the Louisiana Weekly happens to be, with the demise of the Times-Picayune, the oldest locally owned, which happens to be black-owned, news media outlet in the entire city. That's press, media, business. I will tell you that I represent the third generation. It was started by my grandfather in 1925. I will tell you that we are dedicated to giving voice to the voiceless, to promoting our people, to eliminating discrimination in every form. We do it for you. We do it for us. We cannot do it alone. As I said, we are turning into our 95th year. And readership isn't where it should be. And we ask that you all give consideration to supporting us as we support you. We do know that our phones ring a whole lot when you're in trouble, but not when you think everything is fine. We do know that the calls stop coming a lot when folks who look like me and who look like you found out that they could be in what they call a general market paper, when they could be with the white folk. They felt elevated to be looked upon and to have white folks read about their accomplishments, when that white paper didn't give a damn about their accomplishments. The only time that they paid any attention to us was when we committed murder, was arrested, acted fool, so that they can continue to propagate and promote that we are lesser than. In 94 years we have tried, we continue to do it, to promote, validate, congratulate our people, and to promote fairness by our politicians, for equality and justice for all. So I do that on behalf of my grandfather, I do that on behalf of my uncle, and I do that on behalf of my dad. And I stand here as the third generation, hoping to at least make the paper turn 100 years old, and I'm asking you guys to give us some consideration and to support us. I do know that when my dad was at the paper, everybody bought a weekly. Whether they read it or not, they bought it. I can tell you that everybody still reads the weekly, but they don't necessarily buy it. So I'm just asking for you guys' support. Thank you.
Yes. I'd like to publicly apologize. I let my subscription expire. And I'd like for everyone here to subscribe to the weekly. Our promise to be that gadfly is always nudging you here about the weekly. I'm gonna have a subscription card, so I'm gonna bug you. Look out for me. The only way is, and I'm gonna find out from her who's a subscriber. So look out for me.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Dejoie-Hall, for that memorialization and for telling us about Louisiana Weekly. And again, yes, we all need to subscribe to it and to support our black-owned publications within the city. Thank you very much for holding us accountable. Yeah, Ms. Brooke?
Yes, I just wanted to add that it's not just about New Orleans. I mean, it is a very worldly thing, and it covers so much more than just what is going on here in the city. So,
You are absolutely correct. One of my pet peeves is we try and teach history, we try and teach what's going on in communities outside of New Orleans, outside of Louisiana, nationally. Because we do believe in making sure that our folk are educated.
Absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. We again endorse and really support everyone here going tonight and figuring out by way of your computer how to subscribe to the Louisiana Weekly. Yes, I'm sure. Let's go ahead with our conversation. We have to about 6:45, about 17 more minutes for this discussion. I'm going to leave it to you, Mr. Renette, to question these two candidates. Candidates, thank you for being here with us tonight. We very much appreciate it. And if we want to proceed, Mr. Renette, just by some introductions. Mr.
Okay, I'm going to follow the script and ask you some yes or no questions that were given to me. But first, I want you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Good afternoon. The last time I was before Justice and Beyond, I was sitting next to Dr. Bouie and with Dr. Attorney Alexander's when we were working on putting out the word about getting the schools back, and in particular with the John McDonough issue. And that may have been, I think it was 2014 that the discussion started, and here we are again, 6 years later. But I am Shawon Bernard. I'm an experienced educator. 25 years. I was a teacher, a classroom teacher, and I was also an administrator. I've worked at John McDonough, Bell, Hoffman, Wilford, Drew, and Clark. I'm a graduate of Joseph S. Clark High School. I grew up in the Liffey Housing Project, so I was there my entire life. I was one of those fortunate children who I got to go to preschool, Head Start, and all of the things that we are trying to do for children now that used to be part of the system, and it's what helped me to now become an attorney. So I'm also an attorney. I'm a practicing attorney. I have my own office. I work for myself because I thought there was some liberation in being able to be your own boss, and also just that I'm able to provide services to the community. So I've been involved in public education for a while. Since I've been gone, I've been advocating for some things. Number one, I work with the John McDonough Steering Committee to try and get the schools back. But currently I work with Mr. Whitlow with the Lower Ninth Ward Voters Coalition, where we run a high school program. I'm responsible for the high school program, where we're going out into all 42 schools across the city of New Orleans. I work with a coalition called ENVY, and also some of the fraternities and sororities where we're providing community service to the schools. So we also schedule a forum for the students. So we're going to have a student forum on September 26th over at Franklin Avenue Baptist Church. where we help the students to prepare the questions, and then we do early voting, where we take the students to the polls and work with local bus providers to make sure that that opportunity is going on. And on top of all that, I decided that I was a good candidate to run for the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, District 2, which is Orleans Parish, Jefferson Parish, St. John, St. James, Assumption, and St. Charles. So if you're in any of those parishes, you could vote for me.
Good evening. I'm Joe Bouie, and I'm presently serving as the state representative for District 97. I'm also seeking the District 3 Senate seat. I'll defer just a description of myself. I passed out some push cards, and so in terms of my education, my public service historically, 38 years at Southern University, 10 years prior to that doing community organization, developing drug treatment, rehab, and prevention programs. And I offer myself to be a member of the legislature to represent constituents in District 97. All my life I've been a public servant and one who has been not just an advocate of social and economic justice, but one who has tried to deal with large systems change, either through legislation and in terms of advocacy, but this is my first opportunity to have actually a seat at the table, if you will, to be among those who actually develop those social policies. I'm looking forward to answering the question.
So bear with me, these are, some of you all heard these questions before. These are yes, no. Opening swimming pools for the children for as many nice days as possible and not just a short-term swim year. Said yes or no, and you could just making sure that swimming pools for children are open for as many days as possible and not just the short swim year that is on the schedule.
Yes.
Putting the Jackson bus back online in the Lower Line.
Jackson and all that.
Making a public statement about reducing sewage and water board rates for seniors, disabled, poor, and the lifeline lower rate structure for residential and small business owners.
Yes.
Having a fair billing dispute system with a third-party arbitrator, such as the Legal Services of Justice and Beyond.
Yes.
Yes, and we went into the
Having sewage and water board satellite stations in the community to handle billing errors and payments.
Yes.
Yes.
A calendar plan to remove all lead lines, including the solid lead whip lines to homes.
Yes.
Yes.
A program to get residents certified filters that remove lead and other toxins for kitchen faucets at no charge to the elderly, disabled, or poor.
Yes.
Placing sewage and water board under the city council as a more accountable governance body and implementing a plan to end the privatization of sewage and water board work. Increasing efficiency, accountability, saving money, hiring resident employees, and running the operations.
I would say yes.
Moving all meetings that should involve the public, like the Sewage and Water Board, RTA, and Energy, to evening.
Yes, and decentralized.
Changing the legislation to allow children to attend a school in their community.
Definitely.
Ending industrial breaks for plants that have high tumor rates within 100 miles of their facilities.
Yes.
Putting our residents first before state transportation needs and other plans to industrialize communities. Specifically stop the Florida freeway from coming through the 7th, 8th, and 9th wards and getting heavy trucks off St. Claude and North Claiborne Avenue. Removing lead service and lead in water lines that throughout the state, holding them accountable to clean up the mess that is along the Mississippi River from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, also known as Death Valley. Developing a green infrastructure plan, especially for areas that flood, including the right to place rain gardens, bioswales on any blighted land, and eliminating concrete and other permeable surfaces from all future transportation plans. Preventing state funding for any tourist entity that pays less than $4.15 per hour. Preventing state funding for any tourist entity coming into the state, the city, that pays less than $4.15 per hour. Preventing police from arresting children for non-criminal actions and misdemeanors or taking them into custody. Increasing the amount of payments to jurors who are low income and who may not be being paid by employers to encourage a diverse pool of jurors. Streamlining the food stamp application system and making it fair for poor people, as the current online system is too clunky and many of the poor do not have computers. Fighting the expansion of the industrial canal and getting it off the federal government and Army Corps rosters. Now we have some full-on questions that were proposed. What do you propose doing to make sure the Medicare expansion reaches the maximum number and most needy people in the state? And I will direct this to Representative Bouie, as I don't think Ms. Bernard will have anything to do with that on the BESE board.
First, I support the governor's ability to continue to do executive orders to do, but I would also have committed as well as fought to ensure that those bills that were offered to penalize Medicaid recipients and Medicare recipients by doing things like checking the tax returns and subjecting them to work requirements and all of those kinds of archaic and draconian policies that actually do not serve to facilitate what both Medicaid and Medicare was originally designed to do. And that is actually provide for citizens the means of support until, of course, our normal systems can do what they're supposed to do, and that is afford opportunities for successful employment, education, or whatever.
Okay, unfortunately, a lot of these have math education. We will come up with some. Let's just run through these.
And let's just say if there's anybody from the audience, again, if you want to fill out one of those index cards with any questions that are directly related to education from Ms. Bernard, that would be very helpful.
What will you do to make sure that the Medicare contracts are fair and equitable and not slanted in favor of one group or another?
Especially as we speak, the providers have been identified, and DHH has actually awarded contracts, and two vendors in particular were left out. I'm personally following the discussion because there have been appeals and protests by those who were not included. What I was saying was that presently we have actually not only renegotiated but actually identified a new series of providers. And there is some great concern of providers who have been left out of the process. I personally, as one legislature, have been following the discussion, and it very well may be that we have to look at redoing that whole process. And so I'm concerned that some issues have been raised in terms of how the scoring was done and how the selection was made for those who will be the new providers going forward.
What will you do to protect the advances the Affordable Care Act has made, including making sure those who have pre-existing conditions have proper health care?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there have been several bills that really have been trying to roll back not only the expansion of Medicaid and Medicare the government has put forward, but actually are now trying to deal with ways by dealing with work requirements and those other things I mentioned. I'm one who don't sit on that particular committee, but I'm one who is actually watching that. And as one who is seeking the Senate seat, that will afford me a great opportunity because as a senator, you want 39 as opposed to 105. So you really have a little bit more juice and influence.
What will you do to reverse the ruling that feminine hygiene products and diapers are considered necessities and not taxed?
Yeah, I was one who supported Senator J.P. Morrell's bill to actually exempt those particular items, and I will continue to be an advocate for that.
How are you going to do the right thing, even if it may not seem in your best interest right now, and protect our voters against gerrymandering and voter suppression so that election districts are not rigged for one party or another?
Yeah, I think it was a mistake that the Supreme Court supported that piece. I actually offered a bill this session to end prison gerrymandering. I think it is antithetical to our one man, one vote, one woman, one vote democratic theme. And so I will continue to offer a bill that actually addresses the issue of gerrymandering.
What legislation will you push through to tighten and enforce the oversight statewide of the chemical industry and its plants to make sure the poor and disenfranchised are not disproportionately affected by pollution? Chemical industry.
Again, I actually offered a bill. I offered the fence monitoring bill, which was a bill that would have allowed, which would have required oil and gas companies and chemical companies to actually have a monitoring system that when their pollutants reach a particular level, it would sound an alarm in the community and everybody would know about it. That was a bill that the Green Army has tried to do for years, and I partnered with them. Unfortunately, the bill failed, but my commitment is to, again, offer that bill.
Thank you, but we're running short on time, but we do have a couple education questions relatives.
Yes. Is that, okay. These are the educational questions. How will you help get rid of these private enterprises, our public sector, and our schools, and make public education really public again?
So I'm assuming here when we talk about public sector, we're talking about the charter management organizations that are running the schools right now. And I've been advocating for the return of schools back to local governance. That's what I've been doing since, I guess, 2014, when I was working with the Recovery School District. So my experience is I was a teacher and a principal with Orleans Parish School Board. I lost my job with the hurricane. I came back and I thought we were going to create this great school system. So I come back and I work and I take the test, because we have to take the test to get our jobs back. And I came back and I worked for the Recovery School District. And as I was in that system, I realized that things were changing and it didn't seem to be fair, and some of it, in fact, seemed to be a little illegal to me. And I wasn't quite sure what to do with all of this information I was acquiring. So I decided to go to law school, because I just thought that some lawsuits needed to be passed and some direction needed to be changed. And it comes from law. So we have to work with the legislators to make sure that laws are passed, because that's where they took the power away with Act 35. So we have to get in, as I supported Dr. Bouie's bill when he was in Baton Rouge that day, and we did a bus ride. I don't know if that was Justice and Beyond who had the bus that day or not, but we went up to Baton Rouge and he was putting forth his bill in the House of Representatives, and in the Senate they were moving forward with Act 91. And Act 91 wasn't giving any authority back to the school district. So I would continue to pledge to work with the local elected officials. I'm familiar with a lot of them because, again, I've been in this race for a while in terms of doing the work. And I think we need to lay out a legislative agenda so that we're all on the same board. When Dr. Bouie went up and presented his platform, I didn't see anybody, and I didn't see anybody standing with Dr. Bouie in the House of Representatives. But I think the voices of the people need to be loud so that the elected officials understand what we want. And when we send them to Baton Rouge, we expect them to pass the bills and make those bills and propose those bills and to stand with each other because that's what this community wants. So I would like to start off by doing a dialogue to figuring out what do we want, what do we need our legislators to approve or to take back to Baton Rouge to get those bills at least on the floor and hopefully to get some support. And to also you have to work with all of the other parishes because Orleans Parish just can't change it by themselves and to develop out a network. I also work with Jefferson Parish where I work with an organization called the Jeremiah Group, and I also do voter registration in Jefferson Parish. So reaching across the parish line and building up a coalition that we can change some bills in Baton Rouge.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I'm going to ask both of you to take about 1 minute to give some closing remarks, and then we're going to move to our announcements. Please, candidates, would you be agreeable to stick around if someone has some questions, because we've got about 3 we didn't get to ask you, and if you just got to stick around, maybe they can ask you those questions personally.
Sure. So if you have a question and I haven't answered, I'll be more than happy to have that discussion with you. I'm a former educator. I used to be a principal, so I can talk a lot. And as a teacher, we control the classroom. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the mic. But again, I am Shawon Bernard. I've been doing this work for a while, even without in an elected position. I've been traveling back and forth to BESE. I've been advocating on behalf of citizens in this community. So much so that I went to law school so that I can file the lawsuits and I didn't have to pay the attorney. And I filed a couple against BESE and the charter movements and all of those people. So I just need you to do your research, and as you look for someone to replace the current incumbent, just know that my work and my history will show you that I've been doing the work that I hear you all want to have happen, and collectively we have to stick together and put somebody in that office and in that position who represents your best interest. And I think my history will prove that out. Again, number 37 on October 12th.
Thank you so much. Dr. Bowie?
Again, I want to say thank you. I'm always happy to come, especially before Justice and Beyond, because actually the first 2 bills I authored was a partnership with Justice and Beyond. It was a return of schools and a bill to end building schools on non-toxic sites. So I'm indeed happy to be here. My decision to offer myself a Senate seat is twofold. First and foremost, many of you may not be aware of it, but this legislative session, we will have a serious turnover in the legislature. We're losing 40 members in the House and 19 members in the Senate. That's in general. As it relates to the New Orleans delegation, we've actually lost, or will be losing, three of our most effective legislators. That's Walter Shea, Neil Averson, and J.P. Morrell, and you're familiar with all of their work. We actually need this legislative session an experienced legislator, one who has the relationships, because that's what the politics is about. It's about relationships. I had the good fortune of being elected as a 2-term chair of the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus my first 4 years, and I'm president of Floor Leader for Governor Evans. Because of that role, I've been able to develop those relationships across the aisle. That is, work with the governor and our colleagues in the House to work with Republicans and Democrats to say, listen, your party is Republican, mine is Democrat, but bottom line is we're all Louisiana. So let's put that aside and handle the business of the people. And been able to develop those relationships to do that. So I can hit the ground running. As a result of my work in the legislature in this community, I've actually earned the endorsement of a number of both elected officials and community organizations. J.P. Morrell has endorsed me, Cedric Richmond is, Elena Moreno, Jared Brossett. I also have the support of AFL-CIO, Alliance for Good Government, Norms Coalition, IWO, just about all of the organizations. So I'm just looking forward to continuing my partnership with Justice and Beyond and continuing doing the work I've committed to do when I offered myself for public service. Again, it's a pleasure being here. I ask you to pray for me and also vote.
Thank you very much, candidates. We appreciate your time and your passion and for being here with us tonight. We wish you all God's blessings in your pursuit of in being elected. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again. Have a good night. Listen, everyone, we're going to take some announcements.